You've tried everything: self-help books, late-night motivational videos, even well-meaning advice from friends. And yet somehow you're still left feeling disconnected. Like there's this invisible wall between the person you show to the world and the person you really are deep down. It's a feeling that maybe you're missing something essential, that there's this authentic version of you that exists, just waiting to be found. But what if that gap didn't mean there was something wrong with you? What if, instead, you've been looking in the wrong places, chasing things that never needed to be chased in the first place? In today's world, it's easy to get lost in the noise. Everywhere you look, there are endless voices telling you how to become your best self. Every corner of the internet offers a new path to improvement, a new guide to fix your insecurities. The pressure to evolve and to constantly upgrade yourself is relentless. We're bombarded by messages about who we could be or who we should be, and sometimes it's exhausting just to keep up. But what if the answer isn't about adding more? What if instead it's about stripping things away, letting go of the layers you've built up, the expectations you carry, and the need to be anything other than who you are? The truth is, most of us are carrying the weight of roles and masks we've worn for years. At some point, we started adjusting ourselves to fit in, to feel accepted, to meet the expectations of others. Maybe it was in childhood, when we learned which behaviors earned approval and which ones brought criticism. Or maybe it happened later, as we navigated social situations and figured out what people wanted from us. Gradually, we created this outer self to protect us, a version that fits neatly into the world but doesn't quite feel like home. And now we're left feeling like there's this authentic version of us we've yet to uncover, hidden somewhere beneath it all. So we look for ways to bring that real self to the surface. We'll try anything to feel whole: new routines, new habits, maybe even new friendships or career paths. But in that endless pursuit, we sometimes lose sight of a simple truth: the real you is already here. The self you're searching for isn't a destination or a reward at the end of self-improvement. It's not something you have to build up or polish. In fact, it's closer than you think, patiently waiting behind all the noise and clutter. The real challenge isn't becoming yourself. It's realizing you don't need to become anything at all. You simply need to feel comfortable enough to be. Imagine for a moment a life where you no longer felt the need to impress or prove yourself. A life where you could just exist, unfiltered, exactly as you are. That's what authenticity is: showing up, flaws and all, and realizing that you're enough, even if you're a work in progress. The beauty of authenticity lies in its simplicity. It's about unmasking, letting go of the roles and expectations that no longer serve you. The more you embrace this process, the more freedom you find. You stop living for others and start living for yourself. And when you begin to do that, when you start honoring your true self without apology, that's when life feels more aligned. That's when you start to feel like you're not just going through the motions, but actually living. It's a journey that doesn't require perfection, only honesty. So if you're feeling lost, disconnected, or like you're still searching for who you are, maybe it's time to stop looking outside. Instead, look within, listen closely, and know that who you are at this very moment is already enough. I remember a story that perfectly captures the feeling of being lost and desperate to feel like yourself. It's about a woman named Sarah, someone who spent years of her life searching for her true self. Sarah had always been the type to jump into any new trend she thought might fix her insecurities. She devoured every self-help book she could get her hands on, filled journal after journal with affirmations, and even went on a silent retreat, hoping the stillness and solitude would reveal who she really was beneath all the noise. Her life was a constant cycle of searching, trying, and ultimately feeling disappointed. Despite her endless efforts, Sarah still felt incomplete, like there was a glass wall between her and her real life. She'd watch others move through the world with ease, seemingly comfortable in their own skin, and wonder why she couldn't find that same sense of peace. She thought maybe if she just tried harder or stuck to the right routine, she would finally unlock the version of herself she was meant to be. Yet no matter what she did, that version of herself remained out of reach, elusive and hidden. Then, one day, after another failed attempt at sticking to a new self-improvement regimen, Sarah found herself sitting alone in a coffee shop. She felt drained, defeated, like all the energy she'd poured into fixing herself had led nowhere. She glanced down at her journal, which lay open on the table in front of her. Normally, she'd use this time to write affirmations or jot down goals for herself, trying to convince herself she could transform into someone better. But today, nothing she thought of writing felt true. She sat there staring at the empty page, feeling a hollowness she couldn't shake. In that moment, something inside her shifted. Instead of forcing herself to write the words she thought she should believe, she allowed herself to put down the raw, unfiltered truth about how she actually felt. She started writing her insecurities, her fears, and even the parts of herself she'd worked so hard to hide from everyone, including herself. She wrote, "I'm afraid people will think I'm too quiet. I worry I'm not interesting enough. I sometimes feel like I don't have anything valuable to offer." With each sentence, she peeled back another layer, putting words to the thoughts she'd kept buried for so long. Page after page, she poured out her frustrations, her doubts, and the pain of constantly feeling like she had to be someone other than herself to be worthy. It was as if, for the first time, she wasn't trying to impress or convince anyone, not even herself. She was simply letting herself be, exactly as she was, with all her fears and flaws on full display. By the time she finished writing, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a strange, quiet kind of peace. It wasn't the rush of excitement she'd felt after reading a new self-help book or starting a new routine, but something deeper. She hadn't fixed anything about herself. She hadn't solved any problem. But by allowing herself to stop performing, she'd given herself permission to be. In that moment, Sarah realized that maybe the journey to becoming her true self wasn't about adding anything at all. Maybe it was about letting go of expectations, of perfection, of the endless need to become someone else. She saw that the person she'd been searching for wasn't hidden away somewhere. She'd been there all along, patiently waiting beneath the layers of who Sarah thought she had to be. That day in the coffee shop was the beginning of Sarah's journey to feeling whole. Not because she'd found something new, but because she'd finally accepted herself, just as she was. What Sarah discovered that day was the profound power of simply acknowledging who she was, flaws and all. It was a revelation, something that seemed so simple, even too simple, yet it held the key to a kind of peace she'd never known. Her whole life, she had been caught up in the pursuit of becoming a better version of herself, constantly striving to change or improve, thinking that only then would she be good enough. But in that coffee shop, she realized that the very act of trying so hard to become someone else had been the root of her discomfort all along. This method, if you can even call it that, doesn't involve adding anything new or forcing a transformation. Instead, it's about letting go of the pressure to change and learning to sit with the truth of who you are, even if it feels messy or incomplete. It's a radical approach in a world that constantly tells us to be more, do more, achieve more. But maybe that's why it works, because it allows us to stop running, stop pretending, and simply exist as we are. There's something profoundly healing about acknowledging yourself in this way. When you're no longer trying to fix or perfect yourself, you make space for self-compassion, for accepting the parts of you that you might have labeled as not good enough. It's like exhaling after holding your breath for far too long. Instead of forcing yourself into a mold or trying to live up to someone else's idea of success or happiness, you let go of all that and, for the first time, meet yourself as you are. There's a quiet strength in that acceptance, a kind of resilience that doesn't come from changing, but from understanding that you are enough. This approach can feel counterintuitive, even a little uncomfortable. After all, we're constantly bombarded with messages to improve, grow, and become better. Every time we turn around, there's a new tip, a new hack, or a new routine promising to finally make us into the person we want to be. And while growth and change are valuable, they can become traps when pursued without first accepting ourselves. Without realizing it, we may be sending ourselves the message that who we are now isn't worthy of love or acceptance. When we push ourselves to change without that foundation of self-acceptance, we end up reinforcing the belief that our current selves are lacking. This belief keeps us stuck, always chasing something out of reach because we feel we haven't yet earned the right to be at peace. But what if we could release that pressure, stop the endless cycle of not enough, and just be? Imagine the freedom of accepting yourself as you are, knowing that growth will come naturally from that place of peace. For Sarah, this shift changed everything. She began to feel more comfortable in her own skin, more at ease with herself and others. Her relationships improved, not because she was trying harder to be what others wanted, but because she was showing up as herself, fully and unapologetically. Her life didn't transform overnight, but she felt an ease that had been missing for years. That ease came from knowing that she didn't have to become anything to feel worthy. She was already enough. This idea might seem almost too simple in a world that celebrates hustle and self-improvement, but that's exactly why it's so powerful. In a society that constantly tells us to change, grow, and improve, choosing to simply accept yourself can feel like an act of quiet rebellion. It's a method that allows you to stop chasing after an ideal version of yourself and instead start discovering and embracing the person you already are. And in that acceptance, in that moment of just being, you might finally find the peace you've been looking for. The method that Sarah stumbled upon was surprisingly simple, yet incredibly powerful. It's a blend of radical honesty and deep self-acceptance. It begins with a commitment to create a space where you can simply be with yourself, exactly as you are. There's no need for fancy tools or structured routines, no need for a journal if that's not your style. What matters most is that you give yourself a quiet moment free from any expectation or pressure. This space isn't about fixing or improving, it's about showing up and allowing whatever arises to simply be. No filters, no pretending, just you, unfiltered. For many, this approach can feel a little awkward at first. We're so accustomed to presenting different versions of ourselves to meet the expectations of others. Our professional self at work, our put-together self on social media, and even our strong self with friends and family. Stepping outside these roles can feel strange, as if we're peeling back layers that we've spent a lifetime constructing. But that discomfort is part of the process. It's actually the very heart of it. In those moments of honesty, when we let go of the need to perform or project, we begin to build a profound sense of trust in ourselves. It's an opportunity to start believing at our core that who we are is enough, imperfections and all. This isn't about liking every single part of ourselves or pretending we don't have flaws. Rather, it's about accepting that we're human, complex, layered, sometimes contradictory. In these moments of raw honesty, we come face to face with the parts of ourselves we usually try to ignore or cover up. We might feel embarrassed by certain traits or frustrated with certain behaviors, but allowing these parts to come into the light can be incredibly freeing. When we stop fighting against our own reality, we begin to find peace. Think of it as building a friendship with yourself. Just as with any close friend, you don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love and acceptance. You don't constantly criticize or try to change a friend because you know they're valuable just as they are. The same principle applies to yourself. Radical honesty, paired with self-acceptance, teaches you to offer yourself the same grace and understanding that you would extend to others. What's beautiful about this approach is how it ripples into every other area of your life. When you're no longer hiding parts of yourself or trying to be something you're not, relationships start to shift. Interactions become more authentic because you're showing up fully as yourself without the need for a mask. You may find that certain friendships grow deeper while others naturally fade away. This is because people are now connecting with the real you, not a version that you feel pressured to present. The people who resonate with your true self will stick around, while those who don't might drift. And that's okay. Authenticity creates space for relationships that truly nourish and support you. With time, this practice of self-honesty and acceptance cultivates a stronger, more resilient sense of self. You become less affected by external opinions because you're no longer seeking validation outside yourself. You're grounded in the knowledge that who you are is fundamentally okay. The beauty of this method lies in its simplicity. It's not about adding anything or striving for a new version of yourself. It's about peeling back layers to reconnect with who you've always been underneath it all. By regularly creating these honest moments with yourself, you'll start to notice subtle shifts in how you experience life. Situations that once felt intimidating or overwhelming might feel a bit lighter. Challenges become less about proving yourself and more about learning and growing. And as you continue on this path, you may just find that the inner peace you've been searching for was never as far away as it seemed. It was there all along, waiting for you to stop, breathe, and simply allow yourself to be. Here's a simple way to begin this journey back to yourself. Set aside just 10 minutes at the end of each day. Find a quiet, comfortable spot where you can be undisturbed, perhaps your bedroom, a cozy corner of your home, or even a small nook outside if that feels right. Take a deep breath and center yourself in the moment. Now ask yourself a single question. What am I feeling right now? This might seem straightforward, but allow yourself to truly sit with it without rushing or expecting a specific answer. Let whatever emotions arise to come up naturally without trying to categorize, judge, or change them. This isn't about fixing anything or analyzing why you feel a certain way. It's simply about giving yourself permission to feel. You might feel a mix of things, or maybe nothing distinct at all, and that's okay. Maybe you'll find yourself feeling calm, or maybe frustration bubbles up. Some days you might feel content, while other days there might be underlying sadness, anxiety, or even a sense of restlessness. Whatever emerges in that space is valid. It's part of the landscape of who you are in that moment. And in those quiet minutes, you're letting yourself exist exactly as you are, free from the need to put on a brave face or to meet any external expectations. You're allowing yourself to show up authentically, just as you would with a close friend who listens without judgment. Over time, as you make this a daily practice, you'll start noticing subtle but profound shifts in how you relate to yourself. You may find that you're more in tune with your emotions throughout the day, sensing them before they build up into something overwhelming. You'll start recognizing the patterns that color your experiences, those moments when you feel at ease or when you're holding tension. You become familiar with your inner landscape in a way that feels grounding and reassuring. It's as if you're slowly weaving a connection with yourself that runs deeper than any surface-level positivity. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes to navigate life with a greater sense of ease. Instead of pushing through your days on autopilot or masking your true feelings, you begin to experience life more fully. Decisions feel more aligned, relationships more genuine, and small moments of joy start to feel more vivid. You might find that you're no longer hiding parts of yourself just to fit in, nor are you constantly striving to reach some imagined ideal. Instead, you're simply living, showing up as you are, in all your complexity, flaws, and beauty. This practice creates a foundation of self-acceptance that ripples into every other area of your life. When you're connected to your true self, life feels a little bit lighter, a little less complicated. You're no longer carrying the heavy weight of pretending to be someone you're not. Instead, you're free to move through the world with an authenticity that feels both liberating and comforting. You become more resilient, more adaptable, because you're grounded in a sense of self that isn't shaken by outside circumstances or fleeting opinions. And so, in those 10 minutes each night, as you sit quietly and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? You're giving yourself a gift, a moment of genuine presence and acceptance. You're no longer striving, no longer hiding. You're just living. And with each day, each small act of honesty with yourself, life becomes a little more meaningful, a little more real. Because you're no longer separated from your own experience. You're a participant in it. This simple, consistent act of self-check-in gently reminds you that who you are in this moment is enough. And with that acceptance, everything else in life starts to feel a bit more possible, a bit more aligned, as you step forward into a life that feels more like it truly belongs to you. Like you've been trying everything and still haven't found that sense of peace or contentment, then maybe it's time to take a different approach. This isn't about pushing yourself to reach some ideal version of who you think you should be. It's about giving yourself permission to simply be as you are, flaws and all, without constantly aiming to fix or improve. Authenticity isn't something you earn after a lifetime of working on yourself. It's not a reward you get after years of personal development or self-discipline. Instead, it's something you allow, something you make space for, right here, right now. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to live without that constant nagging need to become something else. To let go of the pressure to keep adding new habits, new skills, or new routines to your life just to feel worthy. When you strip away all those layers, what's left is simply you. Your raw, unfiltered self. And that self, as it is in this moment, is enough. Sure, there are parts you may want to grow or refine over time, but growth can be natural, not forced. When you allow authenticity, it's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about showing up in your life with the openness to accept yourself, even when things feel uncertain or messy. Starting to show up as your true self, even in small, seemingly insignificant ways, has a way of opening up your life in ways you might never expect. You start noticing that you're not as weighed down by anxiety or insecurity. Conversations feel more genuine, connections deepen, and even mundane moments feel more fulfilling. You're no longer burdened by the question, am I good enough? Because you're not trying to prove anything. You're simply living from a place of self-acceptance. And that acceptance starts to radiate outward, affecting everything and everyone around you. And it's in these small, authentic moments, maybe when you choose to say what you actually think, or when you let your true emotions come through, that you begin to feel the peace and connection you've been searching for. This isn't something that happens overnight. It's a gentle unfolding, a gradual letting go of the masks you wear and the personas you carry around. It's about practicing self-acceptance in little doses, allowing it to grow stronger over time. Imagine the freedom of no longer carrying the weight of constant self-improvement on your shoulders. Instead of asking, how can I change this about myself? The question becomes, how can I be more okay with who I already am? There's a relief in that shift. You're no longer looking at yourself as a project to be fixed, but as a person to be understood and embraced. So, if this idea resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and hit that subscribe button. That way we can stay connected, and you'll get more insights on what it really means to be true to yourself. And here's something to think about, something to maybe share in the comments. What's one thing you're ready to stop fixing about yourself? What's one part of you that you want to finally accept as it is? Feel free to drop your answer below. Let's start a conversation about what it means to embrace our authentic selves, flaws and all. Because you're not alone in this journey. Every one of us is navigating this, learning to be a little kinder to ourselves, a little more understanding. And if you're ready to dive even deeper into self-acceptance, be sure to check out the next video on how to embrace every part of yourself. Or keep exploring with us as we uncover more ways to finally feel comfortable in our own skin. Remember, you're not just a work in progress. You're already whole, just as you are.